Greetings viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're taking a look at air conditioning systems. We haven't touched on air conditioning systems all summer for 2023. Normally I have at least one AC video up. Not sure why it didn't come up so far because it's been super hot at least the last couple of weeks. Well, today we've got a 2009 Outback 30R Limited in for a complaint of a weak air conditioning system. We're gonna go through, check its charge, check the pressures, check and see why this car is not getting cold inside other than the fact that it is scaldingly hot here in South Carolina. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into the video. So guys, again, what we got here is a 2009 Outback 30R Limited wagon, and customer complaint is the AC system is weak. It's not putting out very cold air. I have confirmed the customer complaint, got in the car, ran it AC wide open, and it's only putting out about 60, 65 degrees at the vent. Should be much cooler than that, even though it is relatively high humidity and temperature right now. It is a cooler day today. I think it's only about 90 degrees today. It has been touching 100 on the heat index, but again, it's not cooling properly. Now, I've talked about these specific models of Subaru in the past, the 2005 to 2009, and how they had an undersized AC compressor, and actually the entire AC system was undersized, holding less than a pound of refrigerant in the whole system. It is just kind of puny, and if you don't have your system refrigerant charge exactly right on these things, they do not put out well. So in the past I have worked on this Outback, but I don't believe I filmed a video on it. So this owner has had this car for the last 100,000 miles. We've got 167,000 miles on the clock now, and he got it around 60,000 miles. And pretty much knows every nut and bolt and what's been done to it. As far as the AC system goes, I believe he said that this AC line here was recently replaced, and occasionally when he starts up he hears a squealing. He's not sure it's something in the belt drive or if it is the AC compressor clutch slipping or having an issue. So guys, first things first, we're going to hook up the AC recovery machine to the car and draw all of the refrigerant out of the system and measure it and check it against our specification. Your specification will be under the hood or on the radiator support on your AC identification specification sticker. We'll see if it's low. If it's low, we'll put a proper charge in it and then see if that's corrected our issue. If it's not low or it's at the correct spec or a little bit overcharged, we will go ahead again and recharge the system to the proper level, and then we will start diagnosing by looking at our pressures on the low and high side of the AC system. Well, with that said, let's go ahead and get the AC machine going and pulling out that refrigerant. So we'll go ahead and take the caps off of our service ports on the high and low side. Hook up our hoses. And start our recovery process. So guys, recovery process is finished up and we pulled out 0.88 pounds, which is right at 14 ounces. So we are within our specification range. So it looks like we are properly charged. We're gonna go ahead and put a fresh charge in it. Maybe add a little bit more, maybe more to 15 ounces. See if that affects anything. Likely won't. We'll come back out and we'll start checking our gauges and see what our pressures are doing to let us know what the issue is with the AC system. So we're going to put a little bit higher charge in it this time, but still within the specification. See if that gives us any better results, although again, I really doubt it. So charge is in, we'll go ahead and equalize our hoses, take our high side coupler loose. Always be careful when you take those couplers loose, because sometimes those Schrader valves can stick open and blow refrigerant all over you. High side disconnected, our low side is still connected. Got to go in and turn the AC on, start the car full blast, and it'll draw everything from the high hose all the way through the low hose into the system. Go inside and check our temperatures and see what we're getting out of the vents. All right, guys, got the car running, got the AC going wide open, got not one but two temp probes in the vents, and we're only getting just below 70 degrees at the vents, which is not very cool. I mean, it's very hot today, but and that is a little bit more refreshing than standing out in 90-degree temperature, but it's not great. And I don't really trust these temp probes, as old as they are, so I'm using the Top Don temp gun, and same thing here, about 70. I think I saw a 60 at one point. We're gonna raise the RPM, raise our idle a little bit, about 2,000 RPM, see if increasing RPM drops us any in temperature. A lot of times if you have a weak AC compressor, when it's sitting, it gets warm, and when you increase RPMs, it can find enough muster behind it to pump a little bit more refrigerant and cool you down a little more. And as you see, holding at 2,000 RPM or so, we've dropped on down into the 60-degree temperature range. So we dropped about 10 degrees between idle and idling up. So 60 degrees, better than nothing, but still isn't cold. We should see at least 40, 50 degrees out of this thing. We'll pull it up to 3,000 RPM now and hold, and see how much lower we can drop this temperature, if any. We're seeing 50s. So I'm thinking we got a weak AC compressor here, but I'm gonna do a little bit more testing before we condemn this AC compressor. So 55, pulling on down there. So again, I think we got a weak AC compressor, but let's go out and check our pressures. All right, guys, we've got the gauges, just the standalone refrigerant gauges hooked up. We're looking at our static pressures right now. Pretty close on our static pressure. We're gonna go inside, turn the air conditioning system on, and see what our pressure is under load. In the factory service manual for this car, Subaru says that between an ambient outside temperature of 85 to 95 degrees, which is where we're at, we should see between 18 and 28 PSI on our low side, and I believe about 240 PSI on our high side. So let's go ahead and turn the AC on and measure those pressures and see where we're at. So we got the AC system on now. We're gonna check our pressures. Our low pressure is about 75. Our high pressure is a tick over 200. And that is not a good sign. Our low pressure is way too high, and our high pressure is on the lower side. The spec was, I believe, 213 to 242 for the high side. So we're gonna jump in the car. I'm gonna take the gauges down, put them on the windshield where I can see. We're gonna rev up to about 1,500 RPM or so. Actually, I believe that was the spec for Subaru for those pressures, and we'll see where we're at then. We're at 50 on the low side, 250 on the high side. Let's go to 1,500 RPM. And we're dropping down to about 35 on the low. And we're a little high on the high side. Let's go ahead and give it to 2,500 RPM. Low pressure is dropped below 30, it's down to 25. High pressure is about 275. So again, we'll go back to 1,500 RPM, which is where Subaru wants us to check that specification. So 1,500 RPM there. Our low side is high, and our high side is high. So guys, been running the car for quite a while. Again, our high pressure is now too high. Our low pressure is too high. Rev it back up, and our low pressure will pull down. Our high pressure will start to go back up, but when we let off RPM wise, that high pressure is not coming down really quickly. Now we're gonna turn off the AC, see how quickly it takes them to stabilize. and that high pressure is staying high. I think we might have a thermal expansion valve issue here hanging up. That or a weak compressor, not exactly sure, but I think we're gonna go after that thermal expansion valve. All right guys, so I yanked a thermal expansion valve off of another 05 to 09 I've got, and we're gonna pop it in there real quick just to see if that's our issue. And if it's not, I'm pretty much gonna rule that this compressor is our issue because I'm not seeing any other problems. So I'm gonna have to switch that out. All we really have to do is pull a 10 here, that 10 millimeter headed bolt. That clamp comes back, these two lines pop out. Then behind this boot is the expansion valve. There's two 4 millimeter Allen headed bolts there, and a couple O-rings, and it's basically in and out. All right, got the old one out, and that, come on, and that is not looking good. A lot of buildup in there. It makes me think that the AC compressor has pooped out. So now that we swapped that thermal expansion valve, I left the little insulator out. We're gonna go ahead and start immediately drawing vacuum. Make sure it holds vacuum, charge it, and see if it makes a difference or not. So guys, replacing the thermal expansion valve did nothing. We're at the same vent temps. Pressures are basically the same. So can basically go ahead and condemn that AC compressor as being weak, because at idle we get warmish air even though it's later in the day now and the temperature has dropped. And we gotta get up to like 2,500, 3,000 RPM before we can drop below 60 degrees vent temp. So that's telling me we got a weak AC compressor. So guys, got the old thermal expansion valve back in, got the system going on, vacuuming down, getting all the moisture out, gonna recharge it, contact the customer, does not want to pay to replace the compressor. It's about $800 and something from Subaru, and a Denso Genuine on Amazon is still about 400 bucks, plus flushing all the lines, labor, replacing another thermal expansion valve, because once the compressor starts going, crap gets in it. And honestly, she put a new condenser in it because crap gets in there and you really can't flush them out. And if you don't have a perfectly clean system, it'll eat up that new compressor. Same as rebuilding an engine and leaving old pieces of metal and debris and bearing material and stuff in the oil pan. It'll just go through, circulate, and destroy the new engine. Same thing with AC compressor. You gotta have a very clean system or you'll tear up that new compressor just the same. So guys, day 2 on this Outback's air conditioning issues. Looking at it again this morning with fresh eyes. It was really hot, really aggravated yesterday with it. So again, hooked up the 134 gauges, checked pressures. The low side was high, and the high side was normal until I started increasing RPM. As I increased the RPM, the low side started pulling down like it should, but the high side kept creeping up, 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 and up until it hit the high pressure cutoff switch and turned the compressor off, cycled down, and then cycled back on. So the high pressure is getting way too high. Low pressure is where it should be when you are giving it more RPM. At idle, it is not pulling down where it should. So that makes me suspect there's some kind of blockage either in the condenser or somewhere on the high side of the AC system. I've gone along all of the lines. I don't see any kinks. I don't see any crimps or any damaged spots that could be restricting it. I took my top-down thermal imager, went across the entire condenser, didn't see any cool spots, didn't see any hot spots, like there was a blockage or any issue in the condenser. But when I measured the inlet and outlet of the condenser, temperature variance was not that great. So I think there's something going on in here. What I think has happened in conjunction with all the metal schmoo I saw inside of that thermal expansion valve yesterday when I was checking to make sure it wasn't sticking by switching it out with a second one. I think what happened is the compressor started crapping out, blew a bunch of junk into the line. It's made a partial restriction somewhere, either in the condenser or in one of the high side lines. So when you give it more throttle input, higher RPM to the compressor, it starts pushing refrigerant like it should, but then it starts building up pressure on the high side until it cycles off. So that would explain why we're not getting a good drop in temperature variance between the high and low side, why we're not pulling more of that heat energy out of the car and dumping it out front of the car at the condenser. We've got some kind of issue with, I think, a weak compressor and a blockage somewhere in the condenser of the high side. So again, my recommendation to the customer would be a new AC compressor, a new condenser, receiver dryer, and flush all the lines and the evaporator. And that should alleviate the issue. But again, price is a concern. It's cooling relatively enough to get through the end of summer. I mean, we're halfway through August now. We've got a month and a half, maybe, or two of heat, although South Carolina normally doesn't start getting cool until October or November sometimes. But at any rate, it's a little bit cooler today. I think it's about 87. Yep, 87. And the vent temp is better. I mean, it's dropping about 20 degrees, but you want more of a temperature drop than that from a good working air conditioning system. And that's not what we've got here. So again, we don't have a confirmation to the fix. I don't have a 100% proof positive that is the issue, but based on the symptoms, based on the gauge readings, that high pressure shooting up until it hits the overpressure and cycles the compressor off, the fact that the low side is sitting high until you get the RPMs up and then it draws down like it should, and it is dropping more vent temp from higher RPM, makes me think the compressor is weak. It has already crapped out, put some debris in the cooling system, created a couple little blockages, and again, the evidence we found of all that metal slurry inside of the thermal expansion valve makes me think that that is the inside guts of the compressor starting to circulate throughout the system. So guys, with that said, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you all in the next one. So this is one of those places where I've got to give it up to GM with their orifice tube rather than a thermal expansion valve. Having this is a nice diagnostic aid when looking at failures in compressors. These should be straight out paper white. This one came out of my buddy's 05 Duramax, and as you can see, clearly evident that the compressor is failing. We see all those metal shards and fragments in the filter. We also see that the white has been dirtied with that metal slurry sludge, similar to what you get built up on your magnetic drain plug on your rear differential, or the magnetic plug or the magnet in the automatic transmission oil pan. And it's just a good indicator of if there's something going catastrophically wrong in the AC system.